Today, I'm here with Kibo School to talk to you amazing people on a topic that I really love. It's like the first sentence is just, I'll call it a easy. Really, we're here to learn about design and how to build beautiful products. So the topic, problems, elegance, navigating software design. My name is Dumebi. Um, I have a very long surname, but you can just call me Dumebi. I'm head of design at Stears. Sorry, seems my screen is frozen. Can you all see?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah. So my name is Dumebi. Currently head of design at Stears. I've been designing for a while. I have I think, funny thing about me is I actually have a medical degree. I studied medical, but then started designing as an undergrad. And then like back in 2012, so it's about, I don't know, so 11, I don't know how many years now. But then I started my professional design career when I resigned from radiography and focused on design in 2018. And since then, I've worked across different parts of design. I started my career as a graphic designer. Then I became an art director, designing for brands, designing adverts, designing landing pages. Then I picked up product design and just kept combining the two, doing both art direction and product quite design for brands like Budweiser, Schweppes, and I think my team, I was part of the team that designed the current Global.com website. If you're Nigeria, you're familiar with that website. And over time, I've worked with different companies. And currently, I'm head of design with Stears. Stears is a data company, and our goal, our mission is to provide answers for Africa, like, what's happening in Nigerian economy, what's happening in Kenyan economy, what's happening in South African economy. You come to Stears and you get the data for that on the platform. So you get macroeconomic data, political data, different kinds of data sets to make investment decisions. So I'm going to get started. We have four things to talk about today, three things actually, and then I'll take questions. So I'm going to move quickly because I have a bunch of slides. I have a bunch of slides. So start with why design, like what's the point of design? Why design importance in the software development process? I'm going to start from a conventional point of view by looking at it from the business lens, because when you work in a company, it's the business that employs different teams to aid towards the business goals. So why should businesses hire designers? So let's look at some data. Of course, I'm from Steers, so we're going to look at data. Sorry, give me a moment. I think my slide is taking a while to load the image. While the image is loading, I'll just keep looking. So there's a research that was done a bunch of years ago, comparing design-led companies, an index of a group of about 100 or so design-led companies with their counterparts that are not necessarily design-led. So the S&P 500 is an index of the top 500 companies in the US stock exchange. And the S&P index tracks the aggregate value of their stock, the growth of their stock, their shares over time, right? And that is the S&P 500 index. So the research was conducted that compared design-led companies and their growth with the top 500 companies in the S&P, in the American Stock Exchange. I found that over a 10-year period, design-led companies outperformed the S&P 500 by 219%, as you can see in the chart. But to explain this, like what is a design-led company? So these are companies that make strategic decisions, considering design first before just decisions around optimizing for profits and utilitarianism. Like, so for example, when you compare Android and you compare iOS, especially in the early days, Android was very big. Even Microsoft and Mac OS. Microsoft, like if you compare Microsoft XP with some of the early Macintosh versions, right? You see that Microsoft, or in this comparatively Android, like have very bare bones approach. You want to design a slide, design of the software. You want to write a document, get into Microsoft Word. You want to work with a spreadsheet, get into Microsoft Excel. Meanwhile, Apple has like a design, like an aesthetic approach to how they design products. So not only do they design functional products, but they also want it to be, to have beauty, they use some craft to add some elegance, right? And in the recent years, Apple has become one of the most valuable, I think it was the first $1 trillion company in the world, has become one of the most valuable companies. And you see that Apple leads a lot in software innovation, in hardware innovation, and other companies sort of play catch up. Like you notice that a lot of HP laptops look like MacBooks now. A lot of Microsoft's, the recent Microsoft OS design is beginning to look like Apple operating system. So I'm going to move quickly here. So there are 4 reasons why design is important. And those reasons are that design contributing to the growth, the revenue of the company, as well as help the company get authority and recognition. So 2 different ways. So like there's branding, building the product, and all of that. So I'm going to get into details. So for revenue, this is a really tricky one to talk about. Most of designs, there's this vibe that design is just a cosmetic addition to a product. Like you just work on the slide, dump everything, and just make it look good. But imagine you're pitching a company to an investor, and the product you're pitching requires attention to details, and then you have a slide that looks pretty, and you're pitching for maybe $1 million, $5 million, and your slide is messy, right? You would want to invest in design because design plays a huge role in how people perceive you and how people perceive the brand and how people perceive, right? Of course, if you study the psychology of design or psychology of vision, you will see that we make a lot of decisions based on what we see. In fact, there's a reason why they say first impressions matter. Because most times the first impression, which is the first thing you see about a product, plays a wrong role how you perceive the product over time. Either how the product made you feel or how you felt when you saw, the layout, right? So design plays a huge role. And of course, design decides the form and the function of, or influences the form and function of the product you actually sell, right? So for example, I say in iPhone, Android, whenever you're making the decision to buy a new device, whether it's a watch, a phone, a car, whatever it is, design is one of your considerations because innately, human beings were egoistical creatures. We love to impress people, right? So the better looking my phone is, the more people will be impressed when they see my clothes is, the more people will be impressed, when they see me. So I'm going to move quickly. Design plays a role in, of course, creating intellectual property for businesses, which makes money for the business. Design plays a role in innovating the service that the company delivers, and actually making sure that the product a positive user experience, right? Like there are features on certain products that they're not necessary, but the moment you start using it, it becomes intuitive. So for example, when Apple eliminated the home button, everybody was shouting, why are you removing buttons? Why do I have to swipe to use the interface? Samsung is mocking Apple, but down some years, I don't know if any Samsung phone still has any button at all. Everybody's using that swipe interaction. So design innovate in a way that makes the experience of using products better, not necessarily the most popular direction, but in a way that makes the most sense, that is most intuitive. In the growth of a company, in the brand. Like when I say Apple, you instantly know I'm talking about the company and not the fruit, right? That is because of branding. Like Apple has branded themselves so much that even when you search Apple on Google, you don't see the fruit for some lines. You're seeing things about Apple, the company. So that's branding. So this plays a role in associating certain words, certain emotions, certain experiences with your brand, with brands. Design plays a huge role in user interaction, retention. The reason why people keep using different products, because most software is design, you're not going to be the only software in the market. You design the app, you design let's say an app, a SaaS product that manages experiences for companies, that manages their processes. You're not the only app on the market. So one of the ways that you ensure that people keep using your app is making sure that the design serves their needs, not just looks aesthetic. So there's the beautiful part of it, the aesthetic part, but more importantly, functionality. Design should be highly functional. And of course, design plays a role in building a community. So for example, I keep talking about Apple. Apple does not have a WhatsApp group for Apple users or a WhatsApp group for people on Facebook community Apples. But the Apple product is built, for example, in a way that enables community, that create bonds between different Apple users. For example, the way AirPlay works, that you don't have to use Bluetooth to send something, you can just use AirPlay. Even things that are quirky that they just added, like you can just tap your phone to someone else and share your contact, right? And the way Apple Pay works. So some of those things are designed things you enable to foster relationships, even the way FaceTime works, even the way iMessage works. And of course, design enables creative communication. So if you look at advertisement, you look at an ad that just has one word and is able to create a strong emotion that lets people remember the brand, know the brand, and of course, patronize the brand. And of course, authority. Authority is another strong thing which is related to branding that design helps to establish, right? So for example, how do you know a product is premium? Right? So when you look for an inferior product and a premium product, the major differentiator is usually better design. More premium products usually have better design, right? So using very good design is one way to elevate the perception of the product and even elevates the amount that product could be sold for. Of course, product innovation is another one. Design excellence. When your product is the standard, when your designs are the standard, you become the industry leader. In that sense, like in the fashion industry, for example, everybody wants to be renowned for having the best design. People want to be the people being copied. Because this brings people to the original, so they come to you. I'm going to move a bit quickly. Of course, recognition. I think I talked about this in passing. So for example, some design-led companies, you might be familiar with some of these, you might not know some of others. So there's Apple, which I've mentioned quite a couple of times. India is this company that builds the task management tool for engineers. You might be familiar with it. They have the beautiful design both on their websites and the design of their product. Airbnb is another design-driven company. Fun fact, the founders of Airbnb are actually product designers, that like designers who design hardware products. Actually product designers, and you see it in the way the product is designed and the intuitive way. Like Airbnb is a very big application, but it doesn't feel overwhelming because they use very beautiful user experience design. WorkOS is another product design-led company that I really love. It's not very popular, but they build, I think they build APIs for entity management for engineers. And there's Ami, which is my favorite software currently, which is a calendar and reminders app that combines your to-do list with your calendar side by side in a very beautiful interface. So I'm going to move on quickly to talk about the design process. So yes, so now you know why design is important. Even as an engineer, when you want to build the software, you want to build a product, you don't just want to build it because you can. You can write the CSS, you can write the HTML, or if you're building it in like React or whichever infrastructure or language you're using, you can code styling and make it look you want. But that your product to win in the market, the design has to be impressive. So let's look at the process. So you might have heard about the design thinking process, the double diamond process. I'm actually going to approach it from a different perspective. So I'm going to talk about it from talk about the process from four, four pillars to speak. So we'll first we start from looking at the problems and then understanding the problem, and then you prototype and build. So how do you find problems? So this is one of the places where design plays a very strategic role in every business, which is that design has designers are very skilled in digging out questions because naturally we are familiar with working with ambiguity, right? I don't know if any of us here design and you've ever been told make it pop. That is the most vague feedback ever. But then somehow we're able to translate that into actions that actually pops. So one of the superpowers of designers is that we can dig deeper. We can dig into several layers to find out what the motivations are. So for example, many times the problems that people advertise when you do user interviews are not the actual problems. Someone can go to buy bread and they're complaining there is no bread, but that's not the problem. The problem is not bread. The problem is that either they are hungry or someone they care about, they want to buy bread for is hungry. So the actual problem is hunger, not bread. So if there's no bread, maybe another food could solve that problem, right? So this is like a kind of lateral thinking, a different way of thinking to come up with conventional solutions. So you think about what are the unanswered questions in the domain. So for example, say you're designing an app that helps doctors to diagnose patients better, right? So you look at what are the current softwares or apps or products in this domain. What are the unanswered questions? What are the biggest headaches? What are the biggest pain points that the doctors or the patients have that this current solutions are not solving? And also, there's something called Stears Insights. You've not heard of it. It's also important to find out why those problems have not been solved. Because some of them could be regulatory reasons, because to bring any solution. Maybe there are solutions that you can't bring in because you need to protect the identity of patients or some of that. So you also need to ask, invert the question and find out why that obvious solution has not been implemented yet. Dig into what are the unmet needs, what are the unresolved issues. For instance, what are the places where the user experience is broken, and then what are the untapped market? We can see from the business lens. If a certain sector is, for example, a $30 billion market, where is the market opportunity there, and how can design play a strategic role in business capturing that market? And the next step is, product design shouldn't actually come first. But why it is there is you start looking at the problem from the lens of solution, start brainstorming what ideas can solve some of these problems, right? What concepts can solve some of these problems? What fidelity problem solution? Because not every problem, not the solutions to every problem is not an app, right? Sometimes it's conversation, sometimes it's an event, sometimes it's a physical structure that the business needs to establish there and have someone there interacting with people, not necessarily an app. Or sometimes it's a phone line or application link or WhatsApp number or a chatbot that needs to be set up, right? So you need to explore the different solutions and different formats. So for example, PESA, for example, uses USSD. Now Besa uses apps as well. But most designers, if they are faced with solving from Besa, would not think USMB. They would naturally gravitate towards an app, a web app, or a software, something using your laptop or phone. Then, of course, there's service innovation, thinking about how do you innovate current solutions and current processes existing in that domain or being utilized to solve problems in that domain. Because sometimes innovation is not really sometimes. Innovation is not always starting from scratch and doing something totally new. A lot of times it's improving what already exists, right? Improving it in this way by adding something or removing something that is annoying or increasing something that is valuable. Or even with costs in some areas that are expensive so that you can improve some other areas. And of course, one of the main differentiators that any product is going to have, which is important at this stage, is to start thinking about how do I improve the user experience. One way that it used to be tracked in the past is how to reduce the number of clicks you need to take to solve the problem. Like if we want to sign up, how do I reduce the number of clicks? But today, we now know that that's not enough metric because it can make the page overwhelming. It's like imagine you want to fill maybe a form that has 50 fields and it's all on one page. It can be very overwhelming. So one of the things people are that designers have done over the years is use what we call progressive disclosure, where maybe you're seeing 5 fields per time. So maybe you're signing up for a bank and it's the first they need to fill your name and then maybe fill your address, the next of kin details, next screen, you fill your identity details. So it's the same 50 pages, but because it's chunked, it feels less overwhelming. So that's another way of like innovating around the user experience. One example of this is it's actually like a real design of an airport where when I like from an airport. So in an airport where when you alight and walk into the airport, you're already at the baggage area. So imagine it takes you, say, 15 minutes to come down from the plane and get to the baggage area. It usually takes roughly 20 to 30 minutes for the bags to be loaded from the plane and brought back area. So you're going to wait a while to get the bag. So in very big airports, it can get very long. And people were always complaining. So one of the innovative solutions is not to make it easier for you to get to the baggage area, but to elongate the journey. So what they've done is they place the baggage area at the other end of the airport. So just to come down from the plane, it's going to take you 15 to 10, 20 minutes to walk to the other side of the airport. By the time you're there, your bags have gotten there. So even though the bag took the same time, the perception is that you got your bags immediately you got there, right? So what I'm trying to point out in this scenario, the better experience is not always shorten the time it takes to get something done. Sometimes you need to extend the time to make the experience meaningful. And of course, innovating around value. This is also a business. Like it's an area where design plays a huge role in innovating how business shows value from the market, right? So imagine one of the ways you see it, let me use a common way. Peak milk didn't used to have sachet, right? Before, if you wanted to take peak milk, you have to buy it in the tin, right? Someone had to design a small sachet so that peak milk can sell to the top of the net, to the people who can afford maybe a 500 naira milk, and also sell to the people who want to buy a 20 naira milk, right? So that's the role design plays in capturing value at the top of the market and at the bottom, right? You also see that in, like, for example, Samsung makes high-end phones, but if you want this cheap Samsung phone, you can get that. So they intentionally design two cadres. They design high-end phones and low-end phones to appeal to different parts of the market. Those are some of the ways design captures innovation. So if you look at it, it's something we all use. For example, the soap. or Google Drive or Gmail. They're all related, right? So Zoom has paid and free versions. That are plans for a lot of these softwares. Gmail, most of us have free Gmail accounts, but they're also corporate Gmail accounts. So there are things you will want to do on your free Gmail accounts, and you find out that you're hitting the limits and you need to upgrade. So the design works with the business to make sure that even the freemium plan is designed to capture value, to move people along the pipeline where you move from using a free user of the software to being a paid user of the software so that the business will make money, because that's how designers and engineers get paid, so yeah. And then of course the next stage is prototyping, where the building actually starts. But I'm going to step back. The building doesn't I'm going to say something that is self-deprecating, in the sense that a lot of designers might come to me for this, but design is not that very important compared to engineering when it comes to product development, because a product can be launched in the market without any designer being involved. The difference is that look bad if the developer doesn't know how to design, right? It might look bad, it might have a bad user experience, but the product can be successfully launched on the App Store. I'm sure you've downloaded crappy apps or you've downloaded bad softwares in the past. That's a sign that a designer was not able. But the truth is that a lot of those bad apps and bad softwares are money for the company. So maybe it's hitting the company goals, right? But then a designer alone, without an engineer, cannot launch a successful product, because you need someone to build it, right? So it is a sweet collaboration. It's like the collaboration between designers and engineers that produces excellent products. So without designers, you can't have excellent products, but you can have products. Without engineers, you will not have any product at all, right? You can have excellent designs, but designs are at best documentation of beautiful ideas. So here for the software, and you document it on a tool called Figma. In the past, it used to be documented on paper. If you did technical drawing, there were wireframes. Before Figma, software was wireframe. Before there were like any beautiful softwares on the computer, or wireframe, before there was Figma, before there was Sketch, right? So my point here is that as it's important to, at this stage, start thinking about how do I collaborate with the engineers that are going to build this at the end of the day? How do I align with them to make sure that these beautiful things I'm designing is possible to build it, right? So that I don't just design a staircase to random staircase to heaven that doesn't go anywhere, right? It's very important that when designing, you align with the developers on specifications. You understand the code infrastructure, what are the libraries you're using, what kind of components or interactions is possible, what kind of interactions is possible, what kind of layout is to understand the infrastructure you're building and designing for example, a Mac operating system is different from designing for a Windows operating system. Designing for a mining company is different, because all those mining companies, all those huge mining trucks, they have computers that run them. So some of us might one day the opportunity to work in such place. It's not running on Windows or operating system. It might be running on a version of Linux that operates that machine. So it's very important to understand the limitations and the specifications of this system that you need to design for. And it's important to progress from low fidelity to high fidelity, although it's not always established. Sometimes the idea is and you go high fidelity first. But the point is to have the understanding that design is a cyclical process. So you should be able to go up to rounds of 30 iterations where you gather feedback, you improve, whether feedback from the market, feedback from user, feedback from business, feedback from stakeholders, and keep improving the design. That's why almost every day you open your app store, you'll be told to update the software, right? You can't count how many times you've updated your Uber app, your OP app, your Vesa app, your Duolingo app, because each of these companies keep updating features, improving the layouts, improving different of the design. And then you go to the building stage, right? And this is the meat of it, because this is the point of it. Like, if there is no building, there's no point to being a designer. Because I don't know if you've ever designed something and that design was never built or never used, it's very frustrating. Of building, because when you have your design portfolio, what is impressive in any design portfolio are the things that have been built, right? Or you are a developer and you just have lines of code, but they are not the working software. That's problematic, right? And the first thing I put here, I canceled designer, and I put design developer collaboration, going from what I said earlier on, because it's the handoff process is based on the assumption that I am done with the design. So it's based on the assumption that I've done the design. It's like, okay, let's say, for example, you're a sous chef and you're working with the chef and you cut all the exported all the ingredients and you hand over to the chef to cook. But this is different, right? Because it's iterative, because I can finish designing, say, 128 pages of an application and I share it with an engineer. It's even from the moment I start designing, I should be talking with the engineer. The first time the engineer sees the design should not be when I'm done. Should not be when I've completed everything. I'm saying, okay, work on it. No. There should be that alignment throughout the process, just to ensure that that the design is within the specifications that the product will be built. And then areas where you're innovating, like you're adding new components, that should be understood early. And the timelines and everything necessary to make it done should be understood and scoped for within the project timeline, right? So it's important that working with engineers should not be I'm done and I hands off. It should be a co-partner relationship, like building. So even though the developer might not be working on much when you're designing, there are things they can do. For example, they can be working on the back end while you're working on the design that will be used for the front end. But it's important to understand the schema of the back end that will speak to the front end that you're designing, so that you know how to organize the information architecture schema. It's also important to align and have a documented design system that is not just a system on Figma, for example. So if you're an engineer, you're working with a designer, and you're working on a project for a long time, it's usually good to have a twin or have a code base, a component library code of the components of the design system. So if you have a landing page design based on the system that has been established, you don't need to start coding things from scratch. You already have the top menu bar, you already have the hero section, you already have a part for the clients, or like social proof to put, okay, these are what people are saying about us. They have a feature component built. So you just put them all together and feed in the new data or new information that needs to be there. So that also helps with moving quickly. It's important to explore the user journey together. And what I mean by this is, when you use a product, sometimes the way you think people use a product is not the way they use it, right? So if you think about the way you use app, sometimes you open your bank app and you jump straight to check your balance and your transaction history. But most times, the first page that loads is where you transfer money. But that might not be your goal for opening bank app. So it's important that you explore, you do a lot of user research, even at this stage, or ask questions at this stage, how people use either your product or similar products to enable those kind of interactions without breaking things, right? So that you don't have only one part of using your software, you enable different parts, because people do things differently. I don't know if you've observed how people use Google. People use Google, a simple product, even how people use ChatGPT. So everybody is different. So you need to enable different user journeys, and people have different questions, different needs, different things they need to solve using your product. And of course, usability, making sure that it's easy to use, is intuitive to use, and it enables people to succeed or achieve. If I want to send a mail, my Gmail should help me send a mail, right? It should not be good at a lot of things and fail at the fundamental task that the software or the app should enable. Now, let's talk about some design principles. And I'm also going to talk about this from different point of view. I don't know how much time I have left, but I think I am somewhat running out of time. So I'm going to go quickly here. So there are a bunch of design principles that I'm going to talk about. So first is taste, and then maintainability, scalability, systems thinking. Taste, I think this is one of the biggest thing design. This is what separates good designers from bad designers. And also this is one of the things designers bring to the table. And there are different definitions of taste. But I think the simple definition I use is taste is the ability to judge what is good or bad design, or what is good or bad music, or what is good or bad software, or what is good or bad fashion, or what is good or bad car, right? So when you say this person has a taste in fashion, it means they know how to dress well and they know how to combine different items to have a very pleasing outfit. This has a taste in music. They know how to, like, their playlists are always on fire, right? So that same way, design taste is that ability that you have to tell good design from bad. And that is learned over time. How? Just by absorbing, right? So you spend time with good design, you spend time understanding what are the principles of something called typography, or there's a system of a way to use colors. There's something called spacing hierarchy, all of those things. So the more you understand how those principles are used in harmony to create interfaces, right? So you visit Apple website or your system. Oh, we're currently on Zoom. You're looking at Zoom, you're studying it. How did Zoom design this interface to enable us to have this conversation this evening, right? So a lot of these softwares, there's this saying that good design is invisible. So a lot of these design softwares are designed so well that it enables you to carry out the actions without even noticing that you're using, for example, you're using Slack or using WhatsApp to communicate. It's just that WhatsApp started doing some funny things recently where they said changing everything to green and adding their AI thing. But otherwise, most software just sort of sits in the background and enables you to complete the task or to carry out what you want. So this excellence can manifest in different ways. It can be in the decision made around the aesthetics of the product. It can be decisions, it can be decisions you make around the hardware and the software and how they speak to each other. For example, looking at Apple products, there's a reason, like, for example, Apple uses metal for the body of most of their products. So the Apple Watch has a metal body, have metal bodies. The iPad has a metal frame, but most comparable products, the tablets, Samsung tablet have plastic bodies. A lot of phones have plastic bodies. A lot of laptops have plastic bodies. So that material choice was a choice they made, which is a function of their taste. And sometimes taste is relative in the sense that you can you can say that there are different aesthetics, right? So in design, there's the minimalist aesthetic, there's the maximalist aesthetic, there's the expressionist, there's the abstract. So there are different styles of design which are not good or bad. It's what you prefer, right? It's just like we'll have different hairstyles and it's just based on a different preference. It doesn't mean one is necessarily better than the other, right? And of course, craft. I'll just define craft as the decision to do everything it takes to build the best thing. So it's like craft is really related to quality, optimizing quality for speed. All right. So for example, in the Japanese culture, they have something they call shuhari, which is how they learn crafts. So first they learn by imitating So this is how a perfect table should be. So they keep building, keep repeating, trying to build that perfect table. And then you try to innovate, and then you do your own thing, right? You learn, you innovate, and then you chart your own path. So craft is one of those places where you see those decisions like Apple makes, like, why is this button extra fine? Like, it's just a button, where some others will just stroke around it, add gradient, and sometimes add a metallic thing to it. And then of course, craft requires patience and attention to detail, and it requires consistency. Because one thing about quality is inconsistency removes quality from the equation, right? So let me use something like cleanliness. If you want to see if somebody is clean, it necessarily doesn't mean that person is always clean, because if they're only clean on Mondays and Wednesdays, then maybe they're not so clean. You know, I'm going to move to the next. I'm breezing through. The summary of this slide, because I have very little time left, is your design should be in some way that it's easy to build and easy for them to maintain. It's going to be modular. You have components that can be used across different breakpoints or devices. You have the software that can be used on a MacBook, an app, an iPhone, an Apple Watch, or different softwares. It's easy to make changes to the software. It's easy to test. It's easy to reuse things and all of that. And of course, you need to design in a way that as the company grows, it's easy for your design to grow. It's easy for the products to grow, easy for the software to grow. So your information architecture should be such that it's easy for things to be found within the software so that people will not be lost. So that's why you have search bars or command bars that help you to find things quickly, and have, of course, powerful and intuitive navigation. It's also important to design with localization in mind, knowing that maybe the software is going to be used in the Arabic world, where, like, if I'm here and I'm reading left to right, like reading right to left, so it means that layout is someone going to be flipped when it's going to be used as locales, right? Or in a Japanese or Chinese context where it's top to down, or even if it's left to right, the characters are different. And another principle that designers, that is very important for design is this system thinking. Like, always have like a big picture approach. Like, think first, like in the entire ecosystem that affects how the product is experienced, right? Think about the business strategy, understand the markets, user psychology. Yeah, that is it. I want to end with this quote that says that indifference towards people and in reality they live is the only. It just means that, as designers, still we're empathetic. But what it essentially means is that you pay attention to people and you care about people. Because if you don't care about people, you cannot design good intuitive solutions for their problems. Yeah, so I guess we would go into the Q&A. So sorry, I think I extended by a couple of minutes into the Q&A session.
I asked a question earlier whereby I watched this video on a YouTube channel called The Design Theory. So the person was saying something about how companies basically use some design in manipulation to attract the customers, something like that. So maybe if you can at least elaborate more on that, please.
Sorry, could you just read the last? I didn't quite hear you.
Okay, so basically how companies mentally use design to attract the customers more into buying or using their products. How is that normally? How? Because you said something about design and psychology go line in line.
Yes, so that's actually mostly the role of brand designers and growth designers. So you've seen ads, you've watched advertisements on TV, you've seen advertisement on billboards, you've been on websites, and you've seen Google. Most of those things are designed, and those designs are very intentional. So they use psychology to understand how people feel, what people react to, and they design it in such a way that it makes it. So, for example, Indomie is a noodle, right? And the insights they worked with was they saw that a lot of mothers love to be seen as good mothers more than they want to be good mothers. Like being seen as a good mother is more important to them than being a good mother, right? So one of the ways they use that is like, if you've seen any Indomie ad, you always see children celebrating their mother for cooking Indomie for them. So that is the insight. That insight is going to scale, and that's the psychological insight that they see from research, from observing, because people will not take it as things, but when you observe people, you see it, right? So they use it in design. So you see the design in copy that, oh, Indomie is cooked by the best moms in the world, and it's in the end of the billboard, and you also see it in the video. So that's an example. Another example, you see crypto apps, the way they design their ads, and they will tell you that they use animation that shows you someone making money, while maybe that is not a real person, it's just an animation. So that is like a bad pattern using design to sell a product, right? You see it used by casino or gambling apps. So if you see betting companies as well. So design can influence people because most times we believe things we see that have good design that they are real, right? So if you go into a website and the design is beautiful, your first thing is a scam website, but it could be a scam website. So on one end is note of caution, but then that's something design does. Yeah. There's a question in the chat I want to answer. So someone asks, what stands out in Airbnb's product design? The UI is cool, but honestly not breathtaking. So what stands out? Why are they leading the design industry? So there's something I said that design is not always about being the most flashy. It's about what design enables. Airbnb is $1 billion company, and the CEO would go on interviews and say that the reason their product is successful is because their product is well designed. So one is if he says that, believe him. But two is when you observe how the product is designed. So when you look at product design, there are two lenses. So there's user experience. So I think you're also confusing the two. So there are basic user interface that might not impress you. Like if you've used Microsoft Excel or Google Slides to do complex stuff before, you know that it doesn't have a beautiful user interface, but it has a powerful user experience. It enables you to get a lot of things done, right? Right. Airbnb disrupted the hospital industry by building a way to have easy way for you to book and book time with a stranger, basically what Uber does, but for houses, right? And then they kept innovating their product to increase trust. That, for example, there was a time they launched host passports, which basically gives you insights about who your host is going to be. Because, for example, if I'm a single lady traveling to a different country, I want to know who I'm going to stay in their house. I'll be able to do a bit of background check so that I'm sure I'm safe where I'm staying, right? So those innovations they did, they were not the first application that hosted houses and stuff like that. But in a lot of ways, they innovated in so many ways that allowed their product to even things they did that was not conventional, like storytelling, the way they have an illustration system that they use to communicate both on the app, both on the website, in all their ads. So when you use Airbnb, it feels like you're part of the community, and it feels like everywhere I'm interacting with Airbnb, they are speaking to me directly. So it's like that psychology, like you feel seen by the company because the way they speak to you, the way the app is designed to interact with you to answer the questions of the question, that's where the magic word is. So sometimes, like I said, a lot of the best designs are invisible because if it is too aesthetic, the aesthetic distracts you from the action you want to take on the layout. Yeah. I see another question. Is there a point where advancements in AI may phase out designers? I don't think so. Because how do we all use AI today? Somebody uses AI. So I think what is going to happen is that designers who use AI might phase out designers who don't use AI. It depends on the industry, right? So there are industries that have specific skills that AI cannot take away, at least for the next 50 years. Because basically AI is a tool, right? And for every tool, it's just like saying a car would not make my leg redundant because I don't need to drive a car everywhere, but I need to use my leg everywhere. So these are just tools that help us to, it's like basically at the fundamental level, machines help to be more efficient, right? So AI helps us to be more efficient. It helps us to do research faster, get answers faster, ideate faster. So it just makes designers faster. There's a chance that non-designers can use AI to create some designs, but they cannot at delivering the kind of work that a designer can deliver. But then a designer who uses AI is going to be way more powerful than a designer who doesn't. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. AI will empower designers rather than take out jobs. But then just at least use AI to research, use AI to answer questions like usability today. What does it mean? Ask AI. AI will break it down for you, right? What are the ways I can improve a software product? Ask ChatGPT. It's going to give you answers to that. So even as students, AI is your learning assistant, right? So it's not going to take your job away. AI can write code, but if you see any code AI as written, it comes warning, right? Because the AI can write one line of code, but every software has millions and millions of lines of code. Like this requires different people to collaborate, do the system architecture, build all the like APIs and endpoints and backend and frontend and everything that allows that code to run. So API just helps us to make different parts of the system efficient. It's not going to likely take over the system, at least in a very long time. Yeah. Um, I see two questions. If you want to advise someone starting out, one roadmap, I would say pick a design course. Just like this is Kibo school. Everyone here is here to learn computer engineering. There are a bunch of coding tutorials on YouTube, but they are not good enough. So enroll in an academy, enroll in a course, learn from a professional through a structured system. I think that's the best start learning design. Of course, there are a lot of free materials. Thankfully, there are also free courses that are robust out there. There are very cheap courses. So, for example, there's the Google UX course, which you can get a scholarship for if you apply. And there are different tutorials and courses, both paid and free. I would recommend take a course and then practice daily. Like do your ugly designs, learn, improve, keep practicing. I think that's a good way to start. The creative part of design, that's very funny because it depends on the industry, right? There is no most creative part of design. If you are a brand designer in a company where brand design is core to the business goals, you'll be paid very well. If a product designer in a company where product is core to the business goals, you'll be paid very well. I personally don't believe in designing because you want to make money. Like if money is your goal, there are a lot of things you can do. You can just open a business or do a trade. And you make more money than designers, right? I don't think choosing your pathway in design because of money is the way to go because you're going to burn out, right? Because everything is hard. Like to be poor is hard, to be rich is hard, to design is hard. What do you go in till you get to be excellent and get to the top of the field is consistency. And what helps to be consistent if you are passionate, if you care about design, if you love to design, then you can embrace the hardship and power trade.